Hey guys, this is the Sovereign Entrepreneur Podcast. As always, this is Rob Greer and have my co-host Danny here. We have a very special guest. We got Adam W. Despite being Eastern European, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his last name. But Adam is a friend of mine. We've done some business together. We kind of crossed paths via cold LinkedIn or Instagram DM from him a few months back for my B2B company, SovDoc, and the relationship kind of mushroomed from there. And he is an expert on all things VSLs and an early 20s entrepreneur. So for those that are kind of in college tuning in, or for those in their late 20s that are still dragging their feet, hopefully this is inspiration to kind of enter the entrepreneurial game. But with that, I'll let him kind of dive in and we can take it from there.
Sweet. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Rob. It's crazy, going from meeting each other just a couple months ago to kind of how our relationship has grown into now. But yeah, happy to be on the pod. Happy to talk about all things marketing, gritty local businesses, and everything else in between. So yeah, let's get to it.
Cool. I mean, do you want to just talk a little bit about like coming from college and your decision to kind of go right into the entrepreneurial game from there? Like, I think you kind of had some entrepreneurs in your family, which were inspirational for you to do that. But it'd be great to kind of hear more about that and kind of
Yeah.
where you've gone from there.
Yeah, for sure. I can give kind of a brief background on my entrepreneur journey so far. I just turned 25, so I don't know if I can say that I'm in my young 20s anymore, but entering in
Just a
my mid
quarter century old. Yeah.
yeah, entering in my mid 20s. But to go back to the beginning, grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. From there, walked on Miami of Ohio's football team my freshman year, and did the whole football thing. I had big athletic aspirations, but soon realized that I wanted to have a little bit more of a traditional college experience, and I sadly wasn't going to make it to the NFL. So majored in finance, did the whole fraternity thing, got a corporate finance internship for a Fortune 500 company in a big city, was kind of on the quote unquote path that people measure success for by all means in that realm of the world. But going into my senior year, I realized pretty quickly after a summer in a big city working in corporate finance that route wasn't going to be for me. I had people in my family in real estate, doing law, and kind of saw the lifestyle that you could make for yourself by having your own business and the autonomy that came from that. And that is really what I wanted. And I knew that's what I wanted because the best part of my day during my internship was my commute on the train. Like, I loved being on the train. I loved the hustle and bustle of the city. And then there I was confined to my box in the sky, and then would love to commute home. But so I knew I wanted to start a business after my senior year of college. And funny enough, my dad actually came to me one day, because we're always bouncing ideas off of each other. He's someone in my family who does have his own business. And he's like, "Hey, it's just down in Florida, and you'd never believe the amount of beach chairs down here, the amount of beach chair companies. I mean, everywhere you go, there's just beach chair, beach chair, beach chair, beach chair, different colors, hundreds of different companies. You should check it out. I know you want to start a business after college. This seems like it would be super fun." So next thing I knew, we were contacting manufacturers, reaching out to people in the area, kind of getting our ducks in a row. And being a finance guy, the numbers looked good on paper, and decided to dive in, partner with him. And that was my first business. So it was cool to be able to partner with my dad on that. We started it together. Literally my senior spring break. I didn't go on senior spring break with my friends. I flew down to Florida with my dad, and together we started this business from the ground up, and literally delivering beach chairs out of the back of a car. We didn't even have a truck, a delivery van, or anything. So started at square one doing that. And that is where I really developed my love for marketing, because I realized that a business can look like an awesome idea on paper, but if you have no sales, then you're making no money. So that kind of transitioned into my second business, which is now what I work with you on, Rob. And it's really helping other businesses make more money and implementing some of the acquisition systems that I have in my very first business, that beach chair company down in Florida. So Long
Yeah.
story short, went to college, traditional path, started a crazy idea selling beach chairs, learned that my real love was for marketing, and then now I'm kind of all in that direction of the entrepreneurial space.
Yeah, and I definitely want to spend a lot of time on the second business. But just commenting on the first, like I think it's commendable that you decided to go into a space that was very quote unquote saturated with other companies. I feel like it's a counterintuitive approach, but in an industry that has a lot of saturation and a lot of competitors, and you come in with kind of fresh thinking and like youthful thinking, like you in your early 20s, and you could leverage tech and AI to kind of disrupt it. I think that's great because a lot of people are like, oh, there's so many competitors in there. Like, I'm not going to be able to do any damage. I'm not going to be able to get any market share. But that was pretty cool that you kind of flipped it a little bit and were able to kind of, accumulate some market share there and, do well for yourself. And then the second business, I think like digital acquisition, Hormozy style, like VSLs rather, and get like specifically for B2B owners, I think is highly relevant. But so it would be great for you to like, I guess, define like what is a VSL? Like what is VSL 101? And like how does it pertain to Facebook ads and like why should business owners be, or I guess B2B business owners be leveraging that?
Yeah. So a VSL is an abbreviation for a video sales letter, and that really is the exact description of what it is. So the traditional style of marketing, if you look back a couple decades ago, everything was in the written form, especially online, right? And they were called more like sales pages or advertorials or anything like that, is like the long form written content. But recently, in the past, I don't know, handful of years, VSLs really have started to emerge, and what they are in short is just the video version of what a sales page would be. So you have to think, if you have a advisory firm, in your case, Rob, and you're helping doctors grow their practice, instead of running a Facebook ad to a sales page that gets them to sign up for a consultation call with you and your team, instead, after they click on that ad, they'd be taken to a sales video, which from what we've found can be much more engaging, much more attention grabbing, and really think of it as almost like the potential customer is watching a movie about why they should book your services, as opposed to reading a book, because people's attention spans are continuing to be shorter and shorter and shorter. So by utilizing a VSL, very few B2B companies are doing it. You see it a lot more in like the info product space in the B2C type realm. But when you can implement something like that inside of a B2B business, it kind of goes to what you're saying. Like, it really disrupts the industry, and you can see some massive results from it, especially with cold traffic.
Right, right. And so like VSL, that makes a ton of sense. And then like what would be like what's funnel 101? Like what is a funnel and like how does VSL play into that? Because I feel like people hear funnel, they hear, TOF, MOF, BOF, and all these
Yeah.
fucking acronyms, but like what does that actually mean?
Yeah. In short, a funnel is just the acquisition process that a business uses to get someone from complete stranger to quote unquote buyer or quote unquote customer. So that is what a funnel would look like. It would be everything from um, basically whatever happens post click. So someone sees an ad on their Facebook page, they click on it, they go to that business's website or landing page or whatever page they're going to. It's like, okay, now that is the funnel. How is the funnel structured to get them to either entering in their personal information, committing to book a call? For D2C companies, it's putting in their credit card information to get them to buy something. So when you think of what a funnel is, I really like a synonym for that is just like their acquisition system that they're using to move someone down that consumer journey in a way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I want to let Danny jump in so I don't monopolize all the questions, but I think this stuff is endlessly interesting and like highly pertinent for me with SovDoc. But like what are the key metrics that you're thinking about as you're kind of managing your clients' funnels on their behalf? And like how important is it for people to understand what their CPA, what their desired CPA is, and like what metrics are underneath that kind of allow you to kind of solve for staying below that cost per acquisition?
That's a great question. And I think that it's something that can be explained by a lot of businesses know their CPA, which in the long form is their cost per acquisition. So if you're running any sort of paid media on YouTube, Facebook, any meta platform, Google search, any of that stuff, and you're paying an advertising platform to put out your stuff, the CPA is on average what you would spend to get that desired result. So if you're spending $100 a day on ads and two people are book a call with your team, like your CPA in that sense would be $50, obviously. So a lot of people have a good pulse on what their CPA is, but the real problem comes down to, okay, how do we lower our CPA, right? And what people don't understand is they look at their business, instead of looking at it as a machine and knowing what lever to pull and what pulling that lever how that will affect other parts of the business, they're simply just using a guess and check model of, hey, let's just split test our headline on this page to see if that increases our opt-ins, or hey, let's change the targeting on this ad to see if we can get more traffic that way. Whereas the approach that like we would take with a company like yours, Robin, what we have, tried to come in and implement is a very clear tracking system of every part of the funnel. So that means, okay, how many people are clicking on the ad? Out of the people who click on the ad, how many people are actually making it to our landing page? Because if you get 200 clicks on the ad, but only 100 people make it to the landing page, maybe your page is loading too slow and you're already losing 50% of your traffic before people can even see the page. But then once people are on your page, how many people are opting in? Out of the people who opt in, how many people book a call? Out of the people who book a call, how many people show up to the call? Out of the people who show up to the call, how many people commit to a second call? So you can see how it's a very linear process of the funnel, right? And when you are able to have accurate metric tracking across all of those touch points, a story kind of illuminates in a way. Whereas you can see if your opt-in rate is crushing it, but then no one's booking a call, okay, well, we don't need to change anything with our ad targeting. Like, that's fine. That's not the part of the machine that we need to change. We need to change what happens after the opt-in.
Right. And like just circling back to the CAC point, because I mean, this is something that we talk about, but LTV to CAC is just such a fundamental ratio in all of business, B2B, D2C. I don't care if you're a software company or a manufacturing company or a doctor practice growth advisory firm, or a company like yours that does VSLs, right? It's all LTV to CAC, LTV, lifetime value, aggregate gross profit over the average customer's relationship. You want to be doing things you can to expand the LTV and increase that, and then you back into the CAC from there. The tricky part is, like a new business like mine, you have to hypothesize as to what the LTV is likely to be, and then you kind of corroborate that with actual data. But it has to be longitudinal, and you have to look back over the course of months and years to see like what actually is it. And then from there, it's like, okay, do I want to get a 3-to-1, which is like, in the software world, the gold standard is like, okay, if you're getting a 3-to-1 LTV to CAC, like you're probably doing something pretty good with the business. But Hormozi's gotten like a 36-to-1, and so like you kind of want to aspire for double digits. And knowing your LTV, knowing your CAC, I mean, that's like the first step in the journey, right? But what you were saying with the funnel too is like you have to do all these optimizations, but that's A/B testing, right? And you only want to change one variable, et cetera. Like, it'd be great for you because you're the expert to like kind of talk through like A/B testing 101 and like how central that is to constructing an effective funnel over time.
Yeah, because the biggest thing is A/B testing is something that's thrown around pretty often in the marketing world that, well, honestly, agencies use it to sell clients on their services, being like, we're going to do all these A/B tests and we're just going to optimize until we get to the perfect combination. But like we went back to our regular point, if you don't know what you should be A/B testing, it defeats the purpose of it. Nevertheless, if you're A/B testing multiple things at once, so some people will be like, well, let's run this audience with this landing page and this offer and compare it against this audience with a different headline and a different price point of the offer. And then it's like, okay, this campaign performed better than this one, and you don't know why. Like, that's not really an A/B test. It's like a B, C, D test, because you don't know which variable affected the outcome. Like campaign 1 may have performed better than campaign 2, but that's really the only insight that you have. You have no idea why. Was it the audience that performed better? Was it the headline? Was it the offer? Was
Right.
it, you know?
It's like the scientific method, but like
Right.
within business.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. I know Danny is working on an information product company. And so, Danny, why don't you jump in and like ask him a little bit about that? Because Adam knows a lot of people that do that, and it might be instructive for you, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, so this is like right up what I'm doing, currently on the side. So yeah, because it's kind of one of those things, like what I've been realizing is exactly what you said, right? It's like I'm gonna change, like it's like apples to oranges. I'm gonna change so many things, and one might work over the other, but I don't know what things specifically are the things that made the difference, right? So like you said that, talk more about, I'd love to hear just more about your process. Like what kind of, like, how are you figuring out like what to split test, right? Like based on, the metrics or keywords or SEO or whatever it is. And then like kind of a timeline of saying, hey, we're going to be split testing so many different things in different funnels, and we're going to run all these tests in order to optimize fully over, it's going to take us like 6 months to really like hammer out what it is. So just go through like kind of where you're figuring out like what to split test kind of at the top of the funnel versus all the way down to the bottom of the funnel, and that like timeline on how you're doing that.
Okay. So to answer your question, I think the traditional way of kind of doing the whole agency model is working with a client and then immediately implementing your process or like your proprietary way of doing things. But when we work with a business, the first thing that we do is come in and see what they're already doing and making sure that their metrics are tracking correctly in the first place. Because if you have bad data that like from day one, you're not going to know what to change. So like in your case, if you were launching a brand new company, that's going to look much different than a company that's already running paid traffic. So if they're already running campaigns and they already have stuff up and running, really the entire first 1 to 2 weeks, we would come in and make sure their tracking is absolutely bulletproof and razor tight to where we can know, like, let's not just come in and blow this whole thing up. Let's come in with what you're doing and see if there are any points that align with where we need to go. And if there is, like, we may not need to just reconstruct this whole offer from square one. There are certainly times where you need to come in and restructure the offer and restructure the whole funnel. But a lot of times businesses are failing because they're thinking that the problem's over here when really the problem is in the opposite direction. And it's kind of our job to come in and illuminate what that might be.
What information products, I mean, are you seeing experience the most success? I guess from a high level perspective.
Yeah, in terms of like particular niches and offers that are
like what are you seeing that's
right
hitting? Yeah, what are you seeing that's hitting right now?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it's more about how I've seen offers pulling in multiple 7 figures a year from anything from like how to learn to play the piano versus how to invest in Section 8 real estate, So it's not like there's any one hot niche right now. I think it's more of what those companies are doing and how they're selling their product that is absolutely crushing. And to say what those companies are doing, a lot of companies now are using what we call a self-liquidating funnel in a way. So it's getting the days of like offering a free guide. While at times it can be successful and can work really well, what some of these info product businesses specifically are doing are selling something for $10 to $20 in the DTC market, and then instead of gathering people who would just be looking for free information, they're basically gathering a list of people who are already proven purchasers and then looking to upsell those customers as they go through the funnel. So they're finding like if you can liquidate your ad spend on the front end and gather a list of people who buy things online, your business will be much more profitable when you're running paid campaigns versus a lot of people who are just looking for free info and then never really want to commit to a high ticket service. Because that's, at the end of the day, the businesses who are making multiple seven figures a year are selling something that's extremely high ticket, or they at least have that option. They're not all selling just like a $197 info course.
Right. Danny, is there anything else you wanted to chat about on your end pertaining to info products, or do you want me to kind of dive into the next theme?
Yeah, let's go into the next theme because that's more personal. Let's give just a high level on one thing I wanted just to stay on copywriting and what you guys are doing at Stacked is one of the questions is like what do you see as the most common mistake? We saw like what successful people are doing, right? Self-liquidating funnels, info product. What are like the most common mistakes people are doing when it comes to like copywriting, funnel creation, marketing, that stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I think so many people fall into the trap of is everyone thinks that their business is the best and they get so keyed in on the features of their business. Like, we're going to give you this amount of information, or we're going to come into your business and do this and this and this and that. When the best copywriters and the best businesses, they don't sell features, they sell outcomes, because outcomes is what causes people to buy, not features. Like, yeah, you can reinforce with features, but especially with cold traffic, you're never going to spark someone's attention by just listing off features.
Yeah. And a follow on that, do you guys use storytelling in your, right? Like not just an outcome, but really telling a story about the outcome, like personalizing it so it really hits that like emotional piece?
Yeah, for 100%. I mean, that's another thing that we kind of tell people internally inside of our company, that if you are writing for a real estate company, they may have 4 or 5 different avatars, but if you're writing to all of those avatars at once, then you're most likely writing to no one. So you can't appeal to everyone. What we try to do is we try to pick one specific avatar. Maybe it's that mom who has 3 kids. She lives in the suburbs. She's a stay-at-home mom, but she's looking to invest in her first Airbnb property and become financially independent, or get that first Airbnb property so she can not feel guilty about spending money on a new handbag. Like something like that you can really paint the picture of, that your goal from writing any piece of content should be someone reading it and be like, that's me. Like, oh my gosh, he's talking to me. Not some blanketed statements of all real estate investors, because sure, real estate investors is, it's kind of niche, but inside of that, there are so many different people that fall on that spectrum of, not everyone wants to be the real estate investor with the Rolls Royce and the yacht and the private jet. I mean, some people are doing that to escape their 9-to-5, or to take their family on vacation, or to do whatever it may be. It's your job as a copywriter is to figure out what those avatars are.
Yeah, and that's something I feel like we could even work on at SolveDoc, right? Like we're kind of casting a pretty wide net from a specialty standpoint. But if we say, okay, plastic surgeon, but in Beverly Hills and within 35 and 50 years old, because we know they're in growth mode, or orthopedic surgeons that are 60 to 75 and on the cusp of retirement and in Miami. Right. And so like just getting more specific, I think allows you to kind of speak specifically to that person. And Facebook is hyper specific with their ads, and AI is enabling that as well. And so I think the more you speak to that person, the more it resonates, and it kind of drives better results. But on the topic of something that we barely talk about at all on Sovereign Entrepreneur, AI, can you talk a little bit about how you're embracing AI in your businesses? I mean, we were obviously really impressed when we started the relationship with I think kind of your analysis of SolveDoc, and you were leveraging, I think, Claude 3 at the time, and now we're already on to 3.5. By the time this posts, maybe it's 4. But yeah, it'd be great to kind of hear more about that.
Yeah, man. I mean, Claude is a huge part of our business. And what I like to, and what can be hard when you're managing so many clients is the different voice of so many different brands, right? Like from the different, like as a copywriter or just as a marketing business, when you're dealing with these people's acquisition funnels, the B2B CPA firm is going to sound a whole lot different than the real estate coach who's helping people get their first multifamily home. Um, and what Claude has allowed us to do is essentially take transcriptions from every single meeting that we have with clients, every single one of our onboarding meetings, where we're able to ask super in-depth questions about their business and how they want their writing to sound. We're essentially able to upload that into Claude and use that as the brain behind our writing to give us an infinite amount of angles to write from. And we do lean on Claude from a content perspective, but I think Claude is great for mass generation, but the great copywriters are then able to go in and enhance what Claude writes, right? Like it's not a copy and paste like, hey, Claude, write me an email or write me a sales page on this. It's, hey, let's have a conversation back and forth with Claude to do our market research and analysis and maybe write out some good hooks and different ideas. And then it's the copywriter's job to kind of formulate all of those things together into a cohesive VSL or sales page, or even just Facebook script that you're going to put out on a new advertising end.
Yeah. And it's also like not super hard to like it's not super hard to like think that end of 2025, Claude 5, it's like able to do all those things, right?
Yeah,
and it just
for sure.
It's such an interesting time to be, I guess, like leveraging AI as it continues to evolve, and like you're evolving your business and your systems and your automations with the AI. I think it's probably something that's going to be pretty lucrative for us as time goes by here.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing right now that we've seen Claude been able to help us with is that avatar research, to where if you know that you're targeting suburban moms just for the sake of the story earlier, you can say, hey, Claude, give me 50 pain points, or like give me 50 struggles that this person might be having in their life at this current time with this current background. And the angles that Claude will give you are so like fresh and descriptive that it might be stuff that me or my team may have not even considered before, but that one sentence from Claude may like spark a new VSL hook just from that one sentence that it's able to give us. And then we're able to take that and run with it and enhance it and really turn it into something great.
Yeah, and I think like just a higher level philosophical point, it's like, are you going to be the person that's like, oh, if AI generated it, then it's somehow inferior, or if any AI generates a song or a piece of art, just because it's not human generated doesn't like, oh, it's not beautiful, right? Or you could be like, AI is going to enable a massive human renaissance, right? Of music, of writing, of whatever it may be. And I think like we're kind of, in the latter camp, and it's kind of like having a growth mindset of it's
Exactly.
like AI is going to happen regardless, and we might as well kind of make friends with it and, create beautiful things together with it and beautiful businesses.
Yeah. I mean, the business owners who are able to use AI to leverage what they're already doing and continue to leverage it as it gets more developed are the ones who are going to win, because at the end of the day, like it's here and the people who are using it are already like ahead. It's either like you use it and win, or you try to do it your own way and kind of push it back. And eventually over time, you're going to get beat out by someone who is.
Yeah. Adapt or die, right? I mean,
Exactly.
That's the old saying. So that's really awesome. And it's cool. Just like Rob said, I've come from kind of like behind everybody. I'm not technologically savvy like you guys are, but just kind of getting into the AI revolution is I'm starting to propel myself like towards the forward of the front of the pack with it, and really utilize it to my advantage, right? You're either going to look at it as like an advantageous tool, or that like pessimist, closed-minded, like, well, I'm just gonna stay in my old ways, and then you get demolished. We've seen that in the history of humanity in every single business, right? The person who adapts wins. So on that, right, kind of shifting gears a little maybe, but I want to know about kind of your more like entrepreneurial journey, just because we don't have all the hours in the world to talk. We could sit here for like 4 hours, but like when you started businesses, right? Like you said, hey, I'm just starting this business from scratch. I knew absolutely nothing, no idea about anything, market share. Like what, how important is it of like being an action taker versus kind of like that, like educator or like researcher and just like figuring out all the facts about everything, but then like it's almost like that paralysis by analysis versus you are kind of just like what you do with AI, you just like adopt it and you're just figuring out as it goes on and as it evolves.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great analogy with the AI thing, because I think it's, if people looked back a year ago at how they were using AI in their business in comparison to now, they would laugh at themselves. They'd be like, man, I can't believe that I was using it for that. Like, now look at all that I'm able to do. And it's the same thing with starting a business. Like, if you go back to the beach chair business, my very first business that I ever started, if I look back to my idea plan of implementation and how it was going to work to what it is today, like 3 years later, I look back at some of our early reporting processes and I'm just like, man, that was so stupid to do it that way. Like, I can't believe that that's how we were doing things. But that's part of the journey and that's part of the process. And you have to know that, like, the beauty of entrepreneurship and the beauty of business is that it is imperfect and it will never be perfect. So you have to find the beauty in creating something, and that's where you have to get your fulfillment from, is that you are the artist behind your own business, right? Like, you're the one creating it and you're building it from scratch. So of course it's not going to be perfect. And the whole goal is to continue layering on and layering and layering and layering, and that the business gets deeper and more developed as you go.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, as an entrepreneur, like, if I think about my journey of self-discovery and self-growth, I mean, the last 2 years as an entrepreneur have just been like so profound in terms of who I became as a person through that process as well, like going through that pain and that suffering and the peaks and troughs of entrepreneurship. You said, looking back 3 years ago, like what you were doing, you look back and it was like idiotic, right? I mean, I do the same thing, and I guarantee we're going to look back in 3 years and be like, wow, that was so stupid, like what we were doing in this very moment. And just like humans in 2040, AI don't even know where it's going to be in 16 years. But I feel like we're going to look back and be like, wow, like we were fucking Neanderthals, right? Just like we've looked back at the Stone Ages. Like, I think it's going to be kind of similar to that. But Danny, you had a thought. Feel free to jump in or a question or anything like that. I think talking Adam's routine could be interesting too, because like,
Yeah.
you're kind of super into your routine. I was until recently. Things have been a little crazy in my life, but yeah, no, jump in and lead the conversation on that.
We're gonna refer to Rob as distracted Rob. Okay, that's how he's been. No, like, so just to quickly touch on like my personal story, right? Like, I had a good life, came up, was making things happen, and then kind of imploded, right? And drugs and alcohol took over. Luckily, I ended up getting sober at your age, right? And I've spent the last like 8.5 years in recovery. And in recovery, I learned that having a routine is paramount to my not only like mental health, but also like success in life, right? Like staying really regimented and having this routine helps me like prime myself for the day every day and really like go tackle the day. So as an entrepreneur, I think it's really important to, regardless, but especially as an entrepreneur, where the peaks and valleys can be so massive, right? Like so massive to where one day you're like higher than high, the next day you're like, hide the sharp objects, I might end it, right? Like, there's no way out. Like, I'm looking around, there's no way out. So
Yeah.
go over like the discipline, the routine you have, because also, as a lot of people, as an entrepreneur, like that's self-starter 101, right? Like, yes, being a business owner is fantastic, but there's no oversight. Like, you don't have to answer to anybody. So what keeps you motivated to really stay disciplined on a day-to-day basis in whatever routine you're about to lay down?
Yeah, it's funny. It's like, it's the story or like the memes that you see on Twitter, and it's like, right now we're so back, 5 minutes later it's so over, 15 minutes later, we're so bad. Like, it's the constant ebbs and flows of business. And I do completely agree with you that having that routine, and I think just like overall confidence in your vision as an entrepreneur is what really fuels me. I said that, you know, I come from an athletic background to where sometimes for me, it just helps. It helps me if I convince myself that every day I wake up and someone is chasing me, you know, and every day, if I'm not doing it, someone else is doing it for their business. One of my competitors is doing it. The person who is going to take that for client from me is doing it for their clients, and they're going to take mine. So I think it's just conditioning your brain to know that it's not like you work a 9 to 5 and you have a boss putting work on your desk and saying like, hey, this needs to get done by this date. But it's having enough like respect for yourself and what you want your future life to be, to know that in order for those things to happen, you need to do things right now, or else you're going to get to that point eventually and you're going to look back and have regrets, you know, and you're not going to be able to fulfill the goals that you're setting now.
Yeah, it's one of those things like choose your hard, right?
Yeah.
Like being lazy ends up hard, and being disciplined is hard today, but gives you freedom later, right? It's like sacrifice now. It's delayed gratification, which I don't think many people are willing to have anymore. So, like, just so the audience knows, like, what is a typical day? And then I'll get to another question I have, but what does a typical day look like for you? Like, wake up to go to bed. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So the typical day, I like my routine here in Chicago is very structured. During the beach chair season, it can vary a little bit with traveling down to Florida, back to Chicago and whatnot. But when I'm in Chicago, it's very structured to where the first 3 hours of my day, pretty much no matter where I am, are what I like to call just like my deep work block, where I try my hardest to shut off my email, shut off my phone. And that's where I work on things that take massive amounts of creative energy, whether it's a VSL that I need to do for my client, or whether it's something that I'm writing for my own content that I'm putting out. It's something where I really need to focus on getting in that flow state of work without any interruptions, and really just try to be dialed in on like being the artist per se. From there, breakfast, gym. I always move for an hour a day, sauna, cold shower, cold plunge, whatever you want to call it. Back to the desk, meetings start. I try to stack all of my meetings after like 1 to 2 p.m. Central Time. And then from there, another meal. After that meal, another work block if I need to, on just wrapping some things up for the end of the day. Stop there and plan what I'm going to do for the next day before I leave my desk. And then once I leave my desk, sometimes it's hard, but I really do make it a concerted effort. That's when I spend time, you know, with my girlfriend, with my friends, and really try to shut off work for the rest of the night. And then, as always, just trying to get 8 hours of sleep. I find that I perform a lot better if I get 8 hours. I can get through it with 7, but anything less than that, I would rather sleep in the extra hour to get to 7 than wake up at normal time and be at 6, because I know that I'll just get more accomplished, and it'll be much better quality work if I'm getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, when it comes to like nutrition, supplementation, is that something you have like a protocol for as well?
Yeah, it's so my mom, believe it or not, she's actually the manager at the local farmers market in my town. So basically my entire life, I've had the Whole Foods just beaten into my head. So I really eat no processed foods at all. I like to stick to pretty much like an animal-based diet. So for breakfast, that just looks like eggs, sourdough toast with some, you know, whole butter and honey. And then for lunch, it's pretty much just ground beef, rice, avocado, and then for dinner, pretty much the same thing, or some sort of variation of, you know, steak, chicken, any other sort of red meat, and keep it pretty simple. I'm not doing anything crazy in the kitchen for sure.
Yeah, I grew up the same way. My parents were like on the organic kick
Yeah.
starting in like the late 70s, and like they got made fun of forever, but like my buddies wouldn't want to sleep at my house because like I had no good snacks at
I was
home.
never
No,
the snack house.
right? Yeah, totally. But what do you think also too, like on top of, this kind of mindset, what do you think like being an athlete, the part being an athlete and growing up in that like competitive environment your whole life, do you think that translates into business?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think that it's kind of like that Mark Cuban quote where it's like, if you like sports, then you should love business because the ultimate sport is business. Like it's 365, it's 24/7. And like I was saying earlier, in the sense of like waking up and always feel like I'm being chased by someone, I think it comes from that competitive fire that I have, where like some people may hear that and then they may think like, dude, how do you not get paranoid? And I think it's a very careful balance of being extremely grateful for what I have and what I've been able to build thus far, but not being satisfied in that aspect and knowing that I have so many more goals and so many more things that I want to prove to myself, my future family, wherever that might be. It's just that competitiveness was instilled in me at a very young age. And it didn't matter if I was playing football or I was going out to start a new business venture. I may not have a direct like competitor in business, maybe, but like I'll just convince myself that I do. I may not even know who it is. I just think that someone is always trying to beat me. And why would I ever do anything if I'm not playing to win? Like, right?
Completely.
Like you
Oh,
play to win the game.
completely. There is no second best. If you're not first, you're last.
Right.
But yeah, I know you're on time here soon, but I guess on the topic of goals and future, I mean, it's the year 2030. Where do you want to be?
It's a good question, man. So you're 2030, so we're looking at like 5 to 6 years from now. I think that's a great question because if you asked me 20 years from now, I think that can be such a tough question to answer because it's like, dude, I mean, who knows what the world is going to be like in
Yeah,
20
your
years? It
brain's
can
going to
be
be on the
hard.
computer. Your brain's going
Yeah,
to be on the
like
computer.
like
So
it can be so hard to answer that. But in 5 to 6 years, I think that is a really realistic question to answer. For me, like I guess at that point I'll be in my young 30s. So the one thing that I do want is I want to have a big family. That's something that I grew up in a family that was extremely close. It's important for me to instill the values that I have in kind of the next generation in my family. So for sure would probably be to have my first kid. I don't know about two at that age, but would love to have a kid, obviously be married, but in terms of business wise, um I don't know, man. It's such a it's such an interesting question because I really don't know. I would like to think that the beach chair business might be in multiple different locations. I could also see myself selling the business before then. In terms of the advertising business, I don't think I ever want to have more than 5 to 10 clients at a time. I think I just want to keep leveling up and working with bigger and bigger businesses and almost acting as a fractional CMO in their business. But I think by the time I'm in my younger 30s, I I think the real way to make like a lot of wealth is to be the offer owner, to be the business owner. Like you can be the marketing agency owner and trust me, like you can kill it. There are certainly guys who make their money that way. But for me, I'm doing that because I love helping other people with their businesses. I just don't know what my next one is going to be yet. And I would like to think by the time I'm, 30, 31, 32, I'll know what that business is going to be and also have, maybe a couple apartment complexes under my belt as
Oh
well,
yeah.
because I think there is something to be said about, I love online businesses, but I do think there's something to be said about owning physical assets as well.
Yeah.
Section 8, baby. You brought it
Yeah.
up. I
Yeah.
got some Section 8. Yeah, in Detroit, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long have you
We
had those for?
um I just started 2024, beginning of 2024 I started scooping some up.
I didn't know
So,
that. That's
yeah,
interesting.
we can talk offline about more about them
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a great question, Rob. That's like something I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I think like I have the next 12, to 24 months really clear cut. But when you start looking at like 5 to 6 years ahead of time, it's like, man, I know a general idea of what I want to look like if I want what I want my life to look like from like a value perspective. But in terms of my day to day, like I really have to think about what do I want to be doing career wise in that sense.
Yeah, no, it's like one of those things I try to remind myself of every day. Like I have it on my board, my whiteboard here, and like obviously it's constantly changing and constantly evolving. And like you take one different path and then it's a completely different 2030 because of like the butterfly effect or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I think like being aware of where you roughly want to be allows you to kind of reverse engineer to the present moment. And yeah, I think like long-term thinking is pretty valuable as an entrepreneur as well. But Danny, do you have any other questions for this guy, or should we let him get to his dinner?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we'll have to do a part two because this was a great conversation. Tons of value. Really appreciate you coming on, Adam, and it was great to meet you, continue the relationship. So, yeah, I mean, last question. Where can people find you? IG, YouTube, X, TikTok, the whole thing. Like, where can people find you online?
Yeah, for sure. Best way to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Adam Wyzorek. Probably easiest though to find me on Twitter/X. It's just Adam Wiz _. And then if you want to check out my company, our domain is joinstacked.com.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll plug everything into the to the caption
Sure,
down
yes,
below
yeah.
on the video. Yeah, so people can find you. But again, really appreciate you coming on. Such a pleasure. Great to meet you. We'll have you back on another time. Guys, Rob, anything from you?
All good, man. We're all good.
Sweet. Well,
All right, well,
thanks for having me on, guys. I've really enjoyed the first couple episodes that you guys have put out, so it was an honor to be a guest. So I'm definitely down to do a part two whenever you guys want.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
awesome.
Sounds good, fellas. Take it easy.
Thanks.
We'll be in touch.
All right.